All right. Hey everybody. It's quiet in here today. You're gonna boom even bigger than normal.
I know.
Hey everybody, it's Ted with the Ted Show, episode 51. Yesterday we had 50, and again, thank you guys so much for tuning in and all the love and support. I appreciate it. Can't believe we're now on our way to 100. My kids would joke that I'm closer to 100 than I am to being born. Because I'm 53, but aren't they lovely? I am. Let us know if you can hear us. Today, my guest is Ray Lloyd, who professionally has been known as Glacier. And so many of you have already messaged me and said, I can't believe you have Glacier on your show. And of course, in all honesty, I had to do just a little bit of the $1.50 research that we do, R&D that we do here at the TED Show, and was amazed. You have an incredible following.
Oh, well,
so,
thank you. I'm thankful for that.
I just think it's amazing you're on here, and I'm sure people are like, Ted, what do you know about wrestling? That's a great thing. I don't, so I'm going to learn today. And Yvonne Sandoval, we love you for putting us together. Appreciate that. Always looking for somebody with a great story, and you certainly have a great story. So everybody, let us know that you can hear us. It is quieter in here than normal, so I still want Ray to go boom on the voice. But good afternoon, and thanks for being here, buddy.
Well, thank you,
I
Ted,
appreciate
for
it.
having me. I'm really, really excited to be here.
So you sent me your bio, and I read it, and I thought, wow, you've lived an amazing life. And then, of course, Yvonne gave me a little bit more background that's in there. But talk to me a little bit. First, where did Glacier come from? And we'll get back into the history. I promise you guys everything. But I think people would love to know where the name came from.
You know what? The short answer is that I joined World Championship Wrestling in January of 1996. And the president of the company, Eric Bischoff, was right in the Turner Broadcasting Company, which really owned WCW, which was Ted Turner's company. They wanted to capitalize off the popularity of the Mortal Kombat theme at that time, which was the TV show, the movie, the video games.
Now the video
and all
games,
that.
sure.
So, and they went to Eric, the president of the company, and said, can we bring this concept into the wrestling world? And basically bring a video game to come to life in the wrestling ring. So that's kind of how it started. And I was the first one picked out of 4 wrestlers that we eventually had a group that kind of beat the crap out of each other a lot.
Wasn't that's sort of what it's about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah.
So Glacier, but you had to dress the part. I saw some of your costumes on your Facebook.
Yeah.
I say costumes. Is that the right word?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I could say business suit. I just want to do the right thing because again, I'm ignorant. So we're gonna all learn this together, everybody. And you then form a persona that's
Right.
Glacier.
Right.
So how did that develop? How did you work on that, and what was that?
Yeah, there were a lot of firsts with this. I was the first of the 4 wrestlers that the company actually hired a special effects team, a Hollywood type special effects team, to actually create the concepts from drawing board to finished product.
Very cool.
That had never been done in wrestling before, so it was kind of breaking new ground there. And they spent a lot of money, which made the pressure even more. You know?
Sure.
So, but then, the good thing about it is we had a very active hand in creating who we were going to become, because in the wrestling business, what I always say to my wrestling trainees when I do seminars, when I do interviews, is that the most successful characters or personalities in the wrestling business are the ones that don't fall too far from who the person really is. Typically, it's just that when they get in front of a crowd, it's the volume turned way up.
Correct. So you were very instrumental in creating that persona. Yeah. And what do you think about that persona resonated, I'm using Yvonne's word, resonated with the audiences? Because that's really how people get their fan base in anything, fan base in anything, because you create this persona, or you create this transparency, authenticity, which we talk about on the show a lot, and then people can relate to it.
Right.
Or they want to root for it.
Sure.
Or they want to root against it. I know that can be either way.
Oh,
in
depending
anything.
on what side.
So what was important to you as far as your persona with that you think resonated with the audience?
Well, there's something I always say in professional wrestling that wrestlers, especially to younger fan base, mostly kids, that wrestlers are like superheroes without superpowers. We're kind of like Batman. We have to figure out how to beat the bad guy without having to be able. We can't jump over tall buildings. We can't do that stuff. So what can we do to actually, conquer the whatever the obstacle is with the bad guy, and do it by using mostly our wits and what we have to work with, which is our ability. And I knew as a kid, I really, I thought superheroes were really cool. Of course, now they're more popular than ever.
They are.
So, and that's the reason why my character is kind of coming back around in popularity, I believe, is because it was such a superhero type character. But I think it was just mainly because with the way that I saw Glacier being was someone who settled things with his actions, not his words. And what he stood for, he also showed that through his actions, not necessarily through his words. Because we can all talk the talk, but it really comes down to can you walk the walk. And so that was what I wanted to show the fan base that hopefully would follow my character, was that good things can be done through whatever actions you choose to do.
Well, I think, and we'll talk about business, and then I want to go back to childhood because we have stuff to talk about. See, that's why it goes all over the world in this section of the TED Show. I think that people will respond better when you have something like that where they can see it's really a part of you. We talk about how the transparency is so important, not just in wrestling or in the TED Show or in our daily lives. Business too. Business is so important. You have to have that ability to relate to the people that you're with. And if you're doing something that you don't believe in, people can tell it. They can smell it a mile away. Absolutely. And then it makes, we were talking earlier about how all of us become exhausted sometimes because we're on all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrible how crazy my life is with the paparazzi. That's a joke, a big joke. But you get to the end of the day and you've done something you love, you're exhausted. It's so much better, like you said, than doing something that you hate and you come home exhausted.
Right.
So we're all very blessed in that. So talk about, you had an interesting growing childhood, and that helped shape you. So talk, I don't want to give anything away, talk about that.
Well, I think most kids probably had some kind of interesting childhood. If you
amen to that.
But
that's a whole nother show.
Yeah, I grew up in South Georgia. A lot of people I think they found it kind of interesting when I tell them I actually have a twin brother. And
I did not know that.
Fraternal twins. We're 12 minutes apart, which I always say had to be the longest 12 minutes of my mom's life.
That's awesome.
But unlike a lot of people, when I hear success stories or whatever that seem to come from very hard upbringing and hard circumstances, I had a great childhood. Had great parents. Both my parents were in law enforcement, so obviously they didn't make a lot of money, but we had a very good family life,
awesome.
Very supportive family. And when I was in first grade, I really struggled with schoolwork, and to the point where they thought about holding me back. They, I think, just were kind of nice to push me through to second grade. But once I got to second grade, I was falling way behind in reading and things like that. And so they had me tested, and apparently I didn't test out very well. And so they met with my parents, and they basically told my mom and dad, and you got to understand this was quite a long time ago when they certainly did not understand near as much about learning disabilities as they do today.
Right.
But even today, it's still something that they really don't understand as much as they would like to.
Correct.
So they basically told my mom and dad that the way I tested out, they used a term that's not even used anymore because I think it's such a cruel term, is they said your son is what we've determined as what they call educable mentally retarded. Basically mildly mentally retarded.
Wow.
And it's, to this day, all my friends know how I so hate that word. I hate when people joke and say that word.
I don't like that word either.
Yeah, but it hits me from a totally different place. But what I didn't know was I knew for some reason I wasn't able to read like other kids. But my mom and dad sat me down, especially my mom, who said, okay, we're going to get this fixed. We're going to get you some tutors. We're going to get this fixed. And what I actually had was severe dyslexia, which now, of course, is something that we know much more about. And so long story short, my mom never really let me know what was going on. The really hard thing for my parents to hear was that when they gave this label to me, they literally told me, or told my parents, they said, your son has this. He's going to struggle the rest of his life. We can maybe help as much as we can, but by the time he gets to high school, if he gets to high school, we recommend that you put him in a technical school so he can learn a skill.
Wow.
And it still gets me.
Well, so they mapped
out my life.
They mapped out your life, but yes, how awful.
And so
is that?
I never knew any of this until, luckily I had a great career, a high school career playing football, signed a college scholarship to go play college football. When I was getting ready to graduate, my mom stood in front of me And so that's why I get a little emotional talking about it. And she said,
I'm getting emotional thinking about it.
So she told me the story that I just told you. And she said, you've been proving them wrong all your life, you didn't even know it. Now you have to go prove them wrong, and you know it.
Wow.
You have to get that degree.
Wow.
And long story short, because I have a master's degree in education, not only did I get my degree while I was playing football, which drove me because I was still battling the dumb jock persona or label that people have. I got a teaching job, became a football coach in Valdosta, Georgia, where I went to school, and I immediately enrolled in grad school. And while I was teaching and coaching, I paid my own way through grad school, got my graduate degree in about 2.5 years.
Wow.
And that one was to say, just in case you thought the other one might have been a gimme, I need to prove to you it wasn't. So
what an amazing story, and what a testament to your parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
How awesome is that? Because back in the day, parents just a lot of parents just accepted whatever was told to them because we weren't as educated, we didn't know as much, and the school system definitely labeled a lot of people that shouldn't have been labeled. Not trying to give the school system a hard time, but I do know that a lot of people, once you say that to a child, they never forget that.
And that's what meant so much to me. When my mom told me the story, she said, I looked him right in the eye and said, that's not my son, and I will not accept that.
I love that.
As a label of him. You don't even know him. You based all this on one test. And so, and ironically, I found great tutors. My mom and dad found great tutors, and I corrected it. It's one thing that you don't ever really get cured from that, so to speak.
Sure.
And what makes a learning disability hard, and that's why I resonate with when I was in the years I became a teacher and resonated with students who had similar issues, is a learning disability is something you can't see. So a lot of kids that go through with it typically get labeled just hard to deal with or stubborn or don't want to do their work. When
discipline problems.
You're right, because it's not a disability that's visible. So that was
I think that's such an amazing story. So is that what helped lead you to decide to become an educator?
It did, and it actually, because I was terrified of reading back in the day, obviously, especially out loud in class, when we all used to have to do that.
I remember.
And so I said, okay, well, once I figured out, that I've got past the disability as far as and the fear of doing that, it's also one of the things that took me into. My mom was a great theater actress as her hobby, and she's the one I always blame. I always tell, even though she was never a wrestling fan, I always say, Mom, I blame you for me getting into pro wrestling because wrestling has you're as much performing as you are an athlete, and so I always. But the ring was also a safe place for me too because no one's asking me to read in the ring.
Correct. Well, yeah, and this is you have control there. You have control there.
Yeah.
Nobody's telling you what you are and what you aren't there.
Right.
That's an amazing story. I love that. And kudos to your parents for that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to still figure out law enforcement and theatrics with your mom.
Yeah.
That's an amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, but I think that probably your parents had such a great perspective on things, probably way ahead of their time, which was such a benefit to you. Does your brother have a learning disability?
He did too. He did. We both did, and we both overcame it. And he went on to be a very successful Georgia State trooper. He followed in my dad's footsteps.
How awesome!
And now he actually is he got an offer to get out of it because he started doing so well when he would be called to court to testify as an expert witness in cases that he actually left the law enforcement and started his own business, him and his wife, and he's one of the top expert witnesses for DUI and drug cases in the nation.
So cool.
So we both prove positive that you don't have to accept that label someone puts on you.
All right, so you get your master's, you teach middle school for 13 years?
14 years altogether, yeah.
And then how do you make the jump, so to speak, into the ring? How do you get to that?
I have no idea. No, actually, I grew up a huge wrestling fan, like a lot of kids of the 70s, in South Georgia. My dad would take my brother and I to the old Jacksonville Coliseum in Jacksonville, Florida, where championship wrestling from Florida was huge. And, of course, my childhood heroes were Dusty Rhodes and Evel Knievel. And so, fortunately, Dusty became one of my mentors later in my wrestling career. Which
what a
was
blessing.
That's
awesome.
And maybe for another episode, I can tell you all the great Dusty stories. There's a million of them.
We would love those.
But this comes down to my decision to get into wrestling. One of my favorite quotes is given to me by one of my coaches who says, it's not necessarily what you know or who you know, it's who's willing to say they know you, who's willing to take a chance on you, who's willing to put their name and reputation out there.
I like that.
And the guy who ended up convincing me to start training as a wrestler, which was between my junior and senior year of football. they were taping a show in Valdosta, Georgia, a TV show, and we would go watch that. And of course, like college guys, we'd act like idiots and stuff. And got to know this one guy who was a wrestler. Found out a lot about that. He was actually a very educated guy as well. That was his thing he was pursuing on the side. Back then, there weren't wrestling schools like they are now. He basically said, "Hey, I think you can do this. I want to train you." I kind of put him off for a while because I didn't believe I could do it. I didn't think I was tough enough to do it. And
it's a lot. I mean, you'll talk about it, but wow, you have to be super in shape, and you really have to know your moves.
You really have to be okay with taking a beating because it's a very unnatural thing to take a beating like that. And so anyway, every time I see him, his name's Fred Avery. He's actually now high school wrestling coach up in Fernandina Beach, and I always thank him, always hug him and thank him because he believed in me. He's the one that said, "I think you can do this." If he would not have believed in me, I really don't know if I would have pursued this. And now I've been very active for 31 years in the wrestling business. I shudder to think what those 31 years would have been like without wrestling. So
he believed in you. Yeah. So the first time you get in the ring, you have like, how does that look? Because it looks very. A lot of people say it looks choreographed, and I'm sure there is some of that.
Some of it, yeah.
But you can't. You could mess up. You still are doing something incredibly physical.
Yeah.
And so, talk about the first time in the ring and how you go. Oh my God, I can't do this. This is the end of that.
I was equally excited and terrified.
Sure.
And his ring was a very old school ring that was still probably the hardest ring I've ever been in my entire career. And he was a big guy. He was like 310 pounds, big burly looking guy, but a very good amateur wrestler, that wasn't who his character was, so he didn't display that in the ring. Sure. Once I learned all that, then I realized his credibility went through the roof as far as what he could teach me. But yeah, I never forget one of the first things he said is, I don't know what you've heard about wrestling, as far as it real as it's fake. He said, but we have a saying in the business, you can't fake gravity. Falling down hurts.
You cannot. I'm going to quote that one. We're going to hashtag that. And you can't fake gravity. Says, I love that.
When's the last time you fell down? It probably hurt, right? I said, yeah. He goes, well, think about this. In this business, you get thrown down, you get thrown into, thrown over, thrown through things. So if you want to think it's fake, just hold on for the ride.
Yeah, because I would like you all flip people over, or you land on your back, and then somebody's jumping off the side of the ring with an elbow. Yeah. I don't know how it can't hurt in some way, shape, or form.
It does hurt, and I always say you have to become friends with the pain because it's it's kind of like playing football without any pads. But for me, what was the defining moment, and one of my mentors always says to me, you either define the moment or the moment will define you. And at that moment when he put us through the ringer, it was actually a good buddy of mine who was a former teammate. I remember literally we were probably there 3 or 4 hours, and at that time his ring was outside. So this was in the South Georgia heat, in a very hard ring that I'd never been in. I was beaten and battered and bruised, but I'll never forget. It's one of those moments that has stuck with me ever since. As I was sitting on the edge of the ring apron, the outside of it, and just exhausted. I remember thinking, I don't know if I'm going to be any good at this, but I've just found what I think I was put on this earth to do.
That's an amazing moment. That's an epiphany right there.
I was like, God, like how have I been missing out on this? It made me feel
it fed
more
you
alive.
in some way.
Oh, it made me feel more alive than anything I'd ever done. And because of that, I have a ritual whenever I go. I still wrestle. I'm wrestling in Toronto on Sunday. Is when I was with WCW, when we were in an arena literally every day of the year. I would walk in, I would drop my bag off, and it was just my ritual. I would sign in like we always had to do. I'd go right to the ring, and I'd stand in the middle, get in the ring, and stand in the middle of the ring, and just take it in, and just remember, this is why I'm doing this. It's not for the paycheck. It's not for the fame or the fortune. This is why I do this, because this makes me feel alive.
I love that. And how important are your fans?
Oh, they're everything.
That's everything, right?
Yeah. Every time I do a podcast. And they always say, do you want to say anything to your wrestling fans or whatever? And I always say, well, thank you to any wrestling fan, period, because even though they may have bought a ticket to come to the show and they weren't necessarily buying it to see me, I knew my job was to work as hard as I could to always say to them, I want you to know, even if it's just me, I want to give you more than your money's worth. Not just your money's worth. Because if I give you more than your money's worth, you want to come pay to see us do it again. But I always finish by saying that without the wrestling fan is the third person in the ring, and or the fourth person if you consider the referee. But I always say a sincere thank you, because if the wrestling fans don't do their part, I don't get to live my dream.
Right.
That we're equally in this together.
All right, so I keep forgetting that I might have a question or two I need to ask you. So I can hear it over here. It's like, Ted. So let's talk about business, because you obviously, that is a business. What you do is a business. Being Glacier is a business. Being in wrestling is a business. But how did you take that and then move it outside of the ring into a different kind of business, a business maybe where you are, you're not wrestling, but you're certainly using the things that you learned in the ring to help people and to do business. Talk a little bit about that. That's not exactly what Yvonne said, but
well, this is a story I just recently shared with Yvonne. Is that I've been so fortunate not only to have great parents, but whenever I needed to have a great mentor come into my life, it seemed like he or she did, and I just had some great mentors who really taught me about, especially in what it takes to win, those concepts and whatever, if it's sport or business or whatever, there's certain concepts that are universal. And when I was in Atlanta, I went back to teaching after I was wrestling full time because I wanted to kind of take a little time to get back to our normal life. The school actually asked me to become the varsity lacrosse coach. I didn't even know how to spell lacrosse at the time.
I'm not sure I did.
But
my son played that. That's a tough sport.
It's a very tough sport. It's one of the oldest sports in this country. I maybe think it's the oldest, maybe the first really organized sport in this country that the Indians actually played way back in the day. So,
cool.
But anyway, so I knew nothing about it, but I took the job because it was a challenge. And I remember meeting with all the parents and all the places. I'm sure they were skeptical. Word travels really fast if they think, oh, this guy doesn't even know what he's talking about. And I remember saying to them, I don't know a whole lot about lacrosse. I said, but here's what I do know, is the concepts and the theories and principles for winning are universal. And those I know very well. So I'm going to take those, and I promise you, we will do very well here. And within 2 years, we were, the third year, our team was playing for the state championship.
Because you're right, because the basic universal principles are pretty much the same.
Yeah.
You just have to understand what you did, how to apply them across the spectrum.
Right.
And so lacrosse may not have been the sport that you knew, but you understood how to make a winning team, how to motivate people.
Absolutely.
And so I think that sort of what you're trying to do. Can I talk about main event?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and I keep looking over here. My friend Yvonne's here. She can come say hi if she wants, but she's not directing me. She was a guest on the show. She's amazing, but she introduced me to Ray. And I want to make sure I cover things because sometimes I get so engrossed in the story that we're at 30 minutes and I haven't covered half the stuff that I want to cover. So talk a little bit about main event, which I love. I love that name.
Yeah, what I call it is, and Yvonne is helping me so much, her and her team. We've been friends for quite a while, but now, she really allowed me to see how I could brand this, with continue to build off the brand I've already built, take it to another level to where I can reach people outside the wrestling industry. Hopefully anybody who's taking those principles that worked in wrestling and saying, this is how I used it in wrestling, let me share that with you, and maybe you could take it and use it towards whatever field of endeavor you have.
I love that.
And so what I ended up calling it was the main event mindset, because in wrestling, there's three main goals. There's, you want to be in the main event, you want to be in the front of a sold out arena, and you want to be wrestling for the title.
Right.
And so that's what, when I was training, I do so much training with trainees, that's what I was always teaching them. And then Yvonne helped me realize that there's a whole world that might could really benefit from learning that philosophy.
100% they can.
And so, and the thing is, like, there's a main event, and whatever your passion is, there's what you would consider the main event of that passion, whatever it is, whatever industry or whatever. And if you're going to be doing it, envision yourself being, at that level to where, you could sell out whatever it is arena for them to come see you be that person, and then you're competing, or you're presenting to them whatever the highest level of that is, the world title of that industry or that profession or whatever. And so when I always say with wrestling trainees is, I always say to them, the first word in your title, professional wrestler, is the word professional. And you're in show business, not show hobby.
I love
so
that.
you need to learn how to take it and learn as a business professional and apply this, so that, because creative people, whether it's actors, theater performers, painters, whatever, creative people tend to be notoriously unorganized.
100%.
So that was, and me, I speak for myself too. So So, Yvonne's team is really helping me look at putting together a game plan so I can share that hopefully with the whole world, and also the hardcore trainees in wrestling who are looking to move up the ladder there can obviously benefit from it as well.
I love that. I think that people are looking for creative ways to do more with what they have.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times people look to the outside to find that creativity, because sometimes you bang your head against the wall, and just having that fresh perspective, which is what you're giving them, and you're also giving them a fresh point of reference, because they haven't been in wrestling, but that doesn't mean anything. Like you talked about, universal rules apply.
Absolutely.
And you can take that and apply it to anything that you're trying to do, whether you're trying to raise money for your charity, whether you're trying to build your business, expand your business, start a business. And I think those are the things that are universal that you can talk about.
And there's three things that I always talk about when I consult with a lot of young wrestling trainees, and three of the things they always say, what do I need to do to get better at this? What do I need to do to make it? And it's the same thing I would give, same advice I give to anyone in whatever business they're in, is the three things I know for sure that will help you. Is one, write down a specific list of goals, write them down, and don't put them in your phone. It's the same thing about you, is show up everywhere. Show up everywhere.
Everywhere, people.
And so that's always the three things I say. Get some goals, work your plan, show up everywhere.
I love that. Well, because it gives you, again, I like the show up everywhere part. That's funny that you say that, because people remember you if you're everywhere. And social media allows you to show people how you're everywhere as well. Yeah. And so that's really cool. I love that. So what have I missed? Because we're at we got to show the belt.
Okay.
I have to show the belt. And Sue Hannah, I know I gave you a heart. Oh, it stopped. Did it stop? Did you hear? Oh, Ted, you are everywhere, rock star. Okay, no, it still shows playing on mine, so we're golden.
Okay. Do you want me to show this?
Yeah, you got to lift it a little.
Yeah, this is.
Look at that, people.
So this is it's a replica of the NWA World Tag Team titles, which I won back in on December 28th, 2001. Very important date for me. And
because that was a childhood dream.
Yeah, it was a childhood dream because of my twin brother.
I did read that.
Yeah, we used to watch a tag team, very famous tag team in Florida, Jack and Jerry Briscoe, who were brothers who became world tag team champions. And so that was my dream when I got into wrestling. I constantly tried to get my brother into it. It just wasn't his thing. So I'd kind of put it to rest. And then once later on in my career, when I got to work and mentored by Dusty Rhodes for his company, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling out of Atlanta, we had talked so much. I told him it was a childhood dream of mine, never thinking, really, I was not saying it to him to help me out. It was just I was sharing that with him. And little did I know that he actually went behind my back to the NWA. Anytime the title changes hands, it has to be voted on. Because in the wrestling business, you don't necessarily win the world title. It's something that's awarded to you.
Sure.
And so when we were here in Florida, actually, not too far from here we are in Orlando, and on that night, he walked up to me and said, and I was tag team with a younger wrestler, so even though I knew I was competing for it, I just figured, okay, well, this will just be, we'll just do this and it'll be done. And he pulled me aside and he said that we got a lot in common. He always called me Raymond. He said, Raymond, we have a lot in common, don't we? And I said, yeah. And I always called him Dream for American Dream. I said, yeah, Dream, we do. And he says, well, after tonight, we'll have one more thing in common. And I said, what's that? And he says, tonight you become a world champion. And
isn't that awesome?
I was like,
that gives me chills too. That's amazing.
And there's a lot more to the story, but that was the gist of it, where it really changed my life, because this was something as a kid I always dreamed of achieving, and someone that I loved and admired so much actually helped me make
what a blessing to be able to work with someone that you admire like
Absolutely.
that. I think that's so awesome.
And he made me earn it, though. So.
I have no doubt. Well, again, back to the hard work.
Yeah,
you have to bring it. So how can people reach you? And we'll post all of this later, but how can people reach you? What's your do you have a website?
Well, Yvonne is one that's helping me with all that, so we're getting all that up and running. But for right now, I have a fan page on Facebook, which is Glacier Ray Lloyd. And also, just real quick, there's another fan page that I would love people to check out, which is called the One Fall Power Factory. As of the first of the month, I'm opening up a wrestling school in Atlanta, and that's what it's called, One Fall Power Factory.
That's so awesome! Congratulations!
And, so I'll be able to hopefully share what I've been so fortunate to learn with anyone who's willing to chase the dream of being a professional wrestler.
And so we will post all of that. I must say, honestly, one of the most humble people, just a gentle soul. You can't make that stuff up. And so I appreciate that. I think everything that you said was said with such grace and humility, and I think
you.
that's amazing.
I've been looking forward to being on the show for quite a while. So
Well, that's
I really
so
appreciate you
kind.
having me.
I'm going to rewind that for my wife later and tell her, like, so Stacy can hear it. But you have been a joy. Thank you so
you,
much,
Ted.
my
Thank
friend.
you.
And thank you guys for tuning in. I'll post everything later. Give me a little bit, and we'll post it on there. We'll give you all of Ray's information. And thank you guys. We love you so much. See you tomorrow. Have a great one.